Hey guys, Morgan here. Today we're going to do some coding together. What do you have for us here, Morgan, you may ask? Well, what this is custom units for war chest that fans made themselves. And there's quite a few, as you can see. So today we're going to pick one of those units and we're going to add it to the war chest website. So just to show you an example of the kind of units that people are making for this game. Let's have a look at this one, for instance, the Enforcer. This was made by a guy who goes online by the name of Bean Soup. And what the Enforcer does is he can remove a base, a control marker, controlled by an opponent or even a friendly one that is 1 or 2 spaces away, and then he can move any unit occupying it. So it's a pretty cool concept. But the one we're going to do today, I picked actually one of the easiest ones to do. We're going to do this one. So as you can see, it's in French. So this unit is the Alchemist. It was created by a guy called Valentin Arnaud. Sorry if I butchered that name. It's a French name. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And he posted this unit on BoardGameGeek. And I thought it'd be a good one to implement. So what this unit does is it can change places or swap places with a friendly unit that is 1 or 2 spaces away. So basically, this unit will go here and the other one will go there. So we're going to go ahead and try to implement it together, and we're going to try and keep it under an hour. So the first thing we have to do is, let me just close this and stretch this. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we need to add this new unit type to our database. So to do that, we're going to run something called a seeder. A seeder is basically a script that can modify the database in some way. Usually it would add or remove records to a specific table. So we're going to go ahead and paste this, and we just have to give it a name. So we'll call this Alchemist unit type. Okay, great. And we're going to create another seeder that will add a new action type. So the new action is going to be called swap. So we'll just call this Alchemist action type. So now we have 2 new files that were created in our project. So let's just have a quick look here. So we have the 2 files here. Okay. So the easiest way to do is I'm just going to grab a previous seeder, and I'm just going to paste it here, and we'll just make a few changes. Right, so we're adding a new unit. So let me just clear this, and we need to give it some parameters. We need to define it. So this is a helper function that will create a unit object for me, and that unit object I could insert into the database. So the Alchemist is a pretty simple unit because it's got 5 coins. It only moves 1 space, no special conditions for attacks, it just does a normal attack. So really all I have to specify is just the name, and everything else is going to be the defaults. And what will happen here, when I run this seeder, it will insert the Alchemist into the database. And then when I roll it back, we want to remove the Alchemist, right? So let's say I made a mistake and we want to erase the Alchemist from the database. So I'm just gonna make sure that the delete query will look for the Alchemist and delete the Alchemist. That's it for the Alchemist unit type, and we also want to add a new action. So I'm gonna copy this. Actually, let me just copy maybe this. This will be easier. Okay, so we're going to add a new action type, and the action is going to be called swap. So again, we have a pretty simple object. All it has is a type, and it's going to add it to the action types table. And when we remove this, we want to remove something quite specific. So we're going to add here, we're going to specify, be something like this. Right. So we're going to delete the swap action. Right, so now I want to run these two seeders, and the command for that is this one. We're going to run the first one. I'm going to just get the name here. That succeeded. I'm going to run the second one. And that worked as well. Okay, so now we want to actually start writing some code. The first thing we want to do is we want to register a new unit type. So this unit is going to be called the Alchemist, which would go at the top. Unit type Alchemist. I always misspell this word. Alchemist. And we also want to create a new array that will have fan-made units. So we'll call it fan unit types. Okay, and then when we serve up all the different unit types, we're going to also add the fan unit types. Okay, that's done. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to add a new action called swap, so that if I draw the Alchemist coin in my hand, I will then have the option to perform the swap action. Okay, so this is the action manager class, and it is responsible for figuring out all the different actions that a unit can perform. Here we have the get actions function and or method, and what it does is it will calculate all the possible actions for a unit in your hand based on the current state of the game. So what we do here is quite a large function, and I'll need to refactor it at some point to make it easier to sort of manage. Here we are going over each of the coins in the player's hand. And for each of those coins, we go over all the units that are deployed on the board. And here we check, is the unit in my hand is the same type as the unit that's on the board? And we're going to add our condition here. Now, the Alchemist is very similar to the Ensign in terms of how it works, because the Ensign wants to find out if there are any units within a space, within a range of 2 spaces. And the Alchemist also wants to find out if there are any units within a range of 2 spaces. So we're going to check, is the unit type in our hand is an Alchemist, and the deployed unit is not poisoned, because poisoned units cannot use their tactic. Then we're going to calculate the swap range. The swap range will be a range of 2 spaces from the position of the Alchemist. So here we pass in, we're going to use a class called HexGrid to help us. The HexGrid class has like a virtual representation of the board, so it knows, if you give it like a position on the board, like a coordinates, it can calculate all the adjacent tiles, or it can calculate like all the tiles that are 2 spaces away in a straight line, and so on. So we're going to use a method on this class called getRange, and the first parameter that it takes is the position of the unit. It's the starting position, and the second parameter represents the range. So how many hexes do we want to get from the starting position? And the third parameter is whether any tiles are occupied, so whether any tiles have units on them. We don't really care about this for our purposes right now. And excluded tiles represents tiles that are not in the game. In a 2-player game, it refers to the dark tiles on either side of the board. So this will give us the swap range. And then for every deployed friendly unit, right, we want to check if that unit is within the swap range. So we're gonna create a new action called swap action, and we're gonna calculate whether we have any units that are in the swap range. So get swap action, and if we do have the swap action, we're gonna actually add it here. Okay, now what we need to pass in for this new function is we want to pass in the ID of the unit in our hand. We want to pass in the swap range, and we also want to pass in the ID of the friendly unit, which is all the units on the board basically. I think that's all we need for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and create this new function. Okay, function, and like we said, it's going to take 3 parameters. So unit ID will be a number, and then we have a range. We're going to pass in a range, which will be an array of strings, and then lastly we'll pass in a friendly unit. So it'll be friendly unit, and it will be an object that represents a unit. And what we want to do is we want to check if the friendly unit's position is in the range, right? So we'll take the range. If the range includes the friendly unit's position, then we're going to return a new action. And that action will have a type. The type is the first parameter. So actually we need to declare a new action type. So I'm just going to go into the action types file, and we're going to declare a new action type called swap, which should go here, swap. And we're going to also declare it here. And we're also going to declare a new interface. An interface is basically something that describes what an object looks like. So I'm going to describe the swap action. It's going to extend the base action. The base action, I think, just has a type and potentially a description and so on. And what we're going to have here is it's going to be a specific type called swap, and it's going to take in a unit ID. Let's do like friendly unit ID number, and I think that's all we need. We can always change it later. Okay, so now we have a new type declared. We're going to go to the top and we're going to import this type. So swap will go here. Great. Okay, so we're going to add a new action called swap, and we're going to pass in a parameter. And like we said, we just want to pass in the friendly unit ID. And we're also going to pass in just the regular ID. So you can always pass in for every action. You can always take a unit ID. Okay. So if it's in the range, then we add a new action. Otherwise, we just return null. Okay. Right. So this should add the action. There's one more thing we have to do. There is an action class, and we need to also add our action here. So we'll add a new action called swap, and we'll give it a description. Change positions with another friendly unit within 2 spaces. Okay. Okay. And we're going to pass in the friendly unit ID, which should come. It's being passed in when we instantiate this class. We can pass in parameters. So this will return the swap action, and we need to also call this swap. Okay, I think that's it for this class. So now we've taken care of adding the swap action for the Alchemist. Next, we need to handle the action. So once you send the action, we want to actually execute the action, basically. So we have another class called Command Manager, and the Command Manager has a handle command function. So we're going to add a new case here for the swap action. So I'll just add a new case swap, and it's going to be, let me just declare the swap action. So swap, okay, and then we want to handle it. So all the actions can potentially return another action. So for instance, if the swordsman attacks, then it will have a next action, right? It'll be able to move after it attacks. So we always return whatever function, whatever command that we're executing, it can always potentially return the next action. In this case, the swap action will not do that, but we're still going to keep the same format for consistency. So let's declare a new function called handle swap, and we're going to pass in the ID of the unit in our hand. So this is the coin that you're spending to perform the action, and we're going to pass in the friendly unit. So this is the unit the Alchemist is changing places with. And lastly, we're going to pass in all the friendly units because we're going to need that, and I'll explain why in a minute. Okay, let's add a new function for swap. Put it after spy, let's put it alphabetically. Okay, so static async handle swap. And like we said, we're passing in a unit, which is the unit in our hand. We're passing in a friendly unit, which is the one we're changing places with, and we're passing in all the units that belong to that player. Okay. Okay. So we want a few things to happen here. First of all, we need to discard the coin from our hand. Next, we want to find the Alchemist on the board because we actually don't have that information from these parameters. So find the Alchemist on the board. We want to reassign the position. So reposition the friendly unit to the Alchemist's position. And then we want to reposition the Alchemist to the friendly unit's position. So the first part is just discarding the coin. I'm just going to grab it from another function because it's something that happens quite a lot. So let's just find it. Okay, this should do. Okay. So to discard the coin, we're going to update the unit resource, which connects to the units table in the database. And we're going to update the state of the unit to be discarded face up. And we're going to do it to the unit that has the ID of the coin in our hand. Okay. So that part is done. Next, we want to find the Alchemist on the board. So we're going to declare a new variable called deployed Alchemist. And we're going to find it in the array of units that we have on the board. So we're going to look for any unit that is of the type Alchemist, and that is deployed. So we're going to look at the state of the unit. Deployed. and we want to make sure that it has a position. So when you have units on the board, only the one at the bottom, so if you have a bolstered unit or like a stack of like 2 or 3 units, only the one at the very bottom will have a position on the board, and all the bolstered units will just be attached to that unit. So we want to make sure that the unit has a position. So this should find us the deployed Alchemist. Okay, so now we want to give the friendly unit, we want to change its position. So we're going to change the position of the friendly unit to whatever the position of the Alchemist is. Position. Okay. And we're going to do that to the friendly unit. And then we want to take the Alchemist and give it the position of the friendly unit. So this will be Alchemist, deployed Alchemist. Okay, that's it. That's all we need to do. Okay, so let's remove our comment. We don't need them anymore. Okay, this will handle that. Another thing we need to do is we need to register a new log. So this is basically the actions log. So when you move a unit, it says in the log, this player has moved the unit. So we need to just register that to indicate that we're swapping units. So I'm going to add a new action called swap, and the text is going to be something like this. So we're going to move the friendly unit. Okay, so what it's going to say is swaps. No, it'll be players unit. So I think this would just be the unit name. Swaps positions with the friendly unit. Okay, so this should say the let's say my nickname online is SpruceGoose, so it will say SpruceGoose's Alchemist swaps positions with the let's say mercenary. Okay, great. That's all done. I think we're done with the backend. So the other part to this is the front end. So this is actually the user interface, the board and all that. So I'm just going to open the other project that I have for the front end. And we're going to add everything we need to actually show the Alchemist on the board. So the first thing we want to do is we want to register the Alchemist as a unit. So it's similar to what we did in the backend. Yeah, I have to just declare it before I do that. So just declare a new unit, Alchemist. Okay. Actually, I want to quickly make sure that I didn't make a mistake here when I declared the unit type. No, that's fine. Okay. Right, so we've added the Alchemist to all unit types. Good. Let me also run the project so we can actually see something in our browser. So I'm running the front end. I'm also going to run the back end so that they can communicate. So the back end has already started. The front end takes just a few seconds. Okay, while this is going, we can continue. So another thing we need to do is we need to register a new image for the Alchemist. So this is just so that you can see the coin on the board. So I'm just going to register a new image for the Alchemist. I'm going to put it here. Alchemist image unit type Alchemist. And this was automatically imported. I'll just put it at the top. Okay, so now we've imported the image. We also want to create a new card for the Alchemist. So when I first started this project, I didn't have access to any of the unit cards, so I had to build them by hand using HTML and CSS. It would have been a lot easier to just have the cards, but I just didn't have those resources at the time. So we're gonna add a new card for the Alchemist. Let me make sure this is imported. Okay. And we don't need this. We want to give the guy who created this credit. I'll maybe also add something on the card itself to say created by, but I'll probably do it later. And this unit has a tactic, and the tactic says swap places with a friendly unit up to 2 spaces away from the Alchemist. Okay. Do we need anything else? I don't think so. Okay. Let's make sure that the project's finished. Okay, now it's ready. So what's going to happen is we're going to have it in our browser. Let's go here. I want to create a new game. And as you can see, we already have the Alchemist showing up here. But there's a few more things we need to do. So, in fact, why don't we start the game, and then it'll be easier to show you what else needs to be done. So usually when I test things, I play against myself. I just use 2 browsers and I have 2 accounts. So I'm going to join my own game, pick sides, go here. I'm going to start a game. So of course I forgot to actually pick the Alchemist. So let me just, let's redo it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select I'm just going to leave just the Alchemist. So to make sure we get it, I'm going to deselect all of these. Yeah, I should really add a deselect all function. All right. Going to join my own game. I'm going to try again. Okay, so now we have the Alchemist here. So we can see the coin, but and let me just let's try to get some units on the board. Okay, I'm going to recruit an Alchemist. Let's recruit an infiltrator. Unfortunately, I got a really bad second hand, but it doesn't matter. Go here. Here, okay, almost there. Okay, so technically now we should already be able to swap places with the crossbowman. So I'm just gonna bolster this guy. All right, so you'll notice that when I select the Alchemist, we don't actually see any icon that lets us swap the positions with the crossbowman. But if I check the network, that we should be getting this action already. So let's just make sure. So if we look at all the actions, we should have an action called swap. So we do have a swap action, and it has the ID of the coin in our hand, and then it has the ID of the coin that we're changing places with, which is the crossbowman. However, we don't have the icon, so we need to add that. So let's just go back into the code. I'm going to go into the unit coin file, and we're going to add a new icon called for the swap action. So let's just duplicate this, call it swap. We're going to position it in the center. And when you click it, it's going to perform the swap command. And we're going to look for an icon in just a second. And we're going to check if this unit is swappable. Let's just find an icon. So usually for icons, I go to Font Awesome. It has 3 icons that I can use. So let's just find something for swap. I'm going to go with this one. Looks good. So it's called right left. So I'm going to go back into my code. I'm going to import this icon here at the top. Put it here, right left. And I'm going to register it so that the application will have it sort of preloaded. Right left. Okay, good. And then I'm going to go back into the unit coin and I'm just going to specify, use the right left icon. Now we do need to write a function that will find whether this unit can be swapped with the Alchemist. So let's register a new action. It would be, yeah, let me just look for recruitable, for instance. Perfect. Add a new one called swappable. And it's going to be very, very similar to this. So we're going to look at all the actions of the unit in our hand. So the unit that is currently selected, we're going to look at all the actions that are available to it. And we're going to look for the action called swap. And in addition, we're going to look for the current user ID. So the current unit ID is, let's go, friendly unit ID should equal the ID, the unit that we're currently looking at. This unit ID. I think that is it. Okay. So technically an icon should appear now. Let's see. If I click here, now we have the swap icon. And I think that's all we need. So let's just see if it works now. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. And what I expect to happen is for the crossbowman to go into where the Alchemist is, and for the Alchemist to go where the crossbowman is. So let's see if it works. This action is not available. I forgot one thing. I forgot to, when we send the swap command, we also want to specify what the friendly unit ID is. That's a requirement. So I'm going to add a new condition here. When I send a command and it is of the swap type, so if action type equals swap, we want to make sure to specify the ID of the unit that we're swapping places with. Okay, let's try again. So I'm going to click here. And now it works. It says Violet Tides Alchemist swaps positions with the crossbowman. So that's it. That's what it takes to add a new unit to the game. I hope you enjoyed. And let me know if you have any units that you would like to see added to the website. I can't promise that I'll add them because it does take time and energy. But there is I created a new channel on the Discord server called Custom Units. And I posted loads of units that fans created. So feel free to have a look there and vote for the units that you'd like to see added to the website.